Thank you, David. Well, good morning, everyone, and I hope everyone is adjusting well to daylight savings. Happy Monday, and we're looking forward to our 30-minute convening. So I will not belabor the time. I will pass it to Matt Bogosian for some updates.
Great, Michelle. Thank you very much, Michelle Burris of the Century Foundation. And thank you all for being here. This is March 10th, 2025, and it's our national 30-minute call every week. It's been happening for a decade, same time every Monday morning, 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central, 9:30 Mountain, and 8:30 Pacific. I'm Matt Bogosian, Executive Director of AMCC, the nation's manufacturing community of practice. And, if you're on this call, you care about strengthening the American project from the bottom up in regions across the country, focusing on strengthening the cornerstone of the American project, manufacturing smarter products in key industries, solving problems, and improving the human condition. So it's great that you're here. We're all working together in a collaborative, volunteering our time, moonlighting in some ways, doing this work from our particular silo or perch, representing an important region or part of the complex ecosystem where manufacturers operate. And, it's different in every region, as we know, and that's why we're working together. Every region's got its own set of public, private, nonprofit stakeholders. So one size doesn't fit all, but do we throw our hands up? No way. We look at the best evidence available and work together to co-create better ways to collect better evidence and co-create better interventions so manufacturers in our communities can thrive. So as Michelle said, we have a presentation today. We have two really flavors of calls on our Monday mornings: roundtable calls where folks are just chatting informally about what's going on, and presentation calls where we're lucky enough to have somebody from part of the ecosystem of support to talk to all of us about what they're doing, what insights that they have to share, or challenges that they have to share, because we got to do both, right, in this community of practice to overcome the challenges that we have and take advantage of those opportunities that we have. And so we're psyched today to have Dr. Gregory Thale, Director at Biomedical Manufacturing Network, here to talk to us about the work that he's doing in that manufacturing vertical. And before I turn it over to you, Gregory, I want to do a couple of things. One is remind folks about key content that's in our AMCC update newsletter that goes out every week. If you don't get it, it's free. And it's informed, by the stuff that you guys send us, and jam-packed with useful information every week. Grant opportunities, opinion pieces, thought pieces, best practices about, what's happening in different regions and different silos around the manufacturing ecosystem. So it's an important thing to look at, maybe before this call or after. Get it out to your networks, thanks to you all. Many of you, it's a reflection in some ways of the work that you're doing, and of course the good hard work of our operations director David Van Sicklen, piecing it together each week. So please look at that. A lot of great content every single week to share and utilize from our particular perch or silo, our particular region. So, and then the second thing I want to do is give folks an opportunity. I see a lot of people putting their name and affiliation in chat. I want to shout out the use of chat during these calls, presentation or otherwise. It's a quick, easy way to communicate important information that busy systems leaders like you can gather and disseminate, etc. As we talk about other stuff on presentations or just in the roundtable. So use that, and then we like to give people, even on presentation calls, a short opportunity to introduce themselves. If they're new, or reintroduce themselves. So if there's somebody here that wants to introduce themselves or reintroduce themselves really quickly, We had a great call this last week with the Urban Institute. I see Megan Tackney is on there. It's great to have you on. You want to say hello, Megan, and tell us where you are in the ecosystem? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Hey, everyone. Megan Tackney. I'm a director of partnerships at WorkRise, which is a project of the Urban Institute. We try to find new research to think about the labor market to lift up low-wage workers. We're super excited about this conversation today and all the conversations moving forward. We like to invest in new research, including in the manufacturing sector. So we're always looking for folks to tell us where the need is and what you need more of to build good jobs. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great, Megan. Welcome, and looking forward to leveraging our relationship to benefit regions around the country and next steps there. Um, let's see, Stephen Bader from the East Bay. I want to give you a shout out because, but for you, this is how it works, right? Like, Stephen's leaned into the AMCC network and ended up inviting us to a big meetup in the East Bay of California where we met Gregory. So why don't you remind folks, Stephen, where you are and what you do there? Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. Stephen Bader, Executive Director, East Bay Economic Development Alliance. We had Matt and David join us last fall as we put the capstone on a 3-year project that we had started with USEDA grant funds. I'll drop the website in the chat. We called the initiative Resilient East Bay, and although the USEDA grant funds are over, we are doing a lot to sort of keep the manufacturing sector front and center as we look ahead to sort of how our region's economy is going to evolve. So very happy Gregory's on here today. He's been a partner in crime of mine in our region for a long time.
Yeah, and I was totally impressed with the event you put on, Stephen, and especially Gregory's presentation because it gets right at the good hard work that so many of you are doing, and the federal agencies, Deloitte, and all these other public-private partners, going way back to the IMCP initiative about identifying what are the key component parts of a thriving regional manufacturing ecosystem. We call it the Big Six. David can drop it into the chat. We have a 1.0 version of the playbook for what we hope to co-create is using publicly available information, a free regional self-assessment tool and playbook, so regions can move faster in identifying the gaps within their manufacturing ecosystem, whether or not they're workforce or they're part of the research, innovation, and entrepreneurship sub-silo or operational improvement or capital access. Yeah, it's complex system science for sure, but we've gotten our arms around it a little bit and we need to co-create better solutions faster. And so without any further ado, one person and one group doing some cool work in the biomedical field is Gregory. So Gregory, please welcome and tell us about the good hard work you've done in kind of looking at that vertical, I would say, within manufacturing and not only in the Bay Area, but I know you're going to talk a little bit about across the country and internationally. So Gregory, welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David, as well, and welcome everyone. If I could share the screen, I'll show you some of the work we've done. Is that okay, Matt?
Yep, go for it.
So hello, everyone. I'm Gregory Thiel. I'm the director of the Biomedical Manufacturing Network. And my partner in all of this is Stephen Bader. So I'm very happy that he had a chance to talk about the East Bay ADA as well. So this map in front of you, you can see this all right, Matt?
Yep.
Great. So about 10 years ago, we got a series of grants that had a single mission, and that was to expand the biomedical industry in the East Bay. So the circle here that I just put up is the East Bay. Those of you familiar with the geography of the Bay Area, the peninsula is known for its biomedical industry, mainly research and development, but a lot of really big companies and a lot of great exciting things coming out. And we were given a grant to try to move some of this activity along the value chain, specifically to manufacturing to a new geography, this area in the East Bay. And Stephen was really the point of all of this. He saw me sitting around at UC Berkeley and said, I need a job to do. So he recruited me to come along. And so we've spent the past 10 years working with this ecosystem. And as you can see, each one of these pins are a company. And the number one task, so I interviewed for the position and I asked Stephen, I said, so what should we do first? And he said, well, how about we figure out who's out there first to see who we can help? And so I recruited a group of grad students and sent them out. And we identified over 2,500 biomedical manufacturing companies in the Bay Area. And so that was task one. So any of you who are working with ecosystem building, knowing who's out there, that was the most important thing we did first. And then subsequently, every 2 years, we've sent that team, a team of grad students out, knocking on doors and checking websites and updating the database. That's been the first thing, because once you know who's there, the story then can be built upon. And so let me continue, and I'll tell you a few parts about the story that we've learned. The first story is that not only do you find out where the companies are, but you can find out the companies by the segment they're in. And so the biomedical industry is a really big umbrella. And so all of the green companies I just pulled up are biotech companies. These are companies that are developing new products, new ways of doing things with living material. And so this big map with tons of companies on it, you can start pulling it apart by looking at individual segments. And so many people thought, before we did all this research, that all of the biotech companies were clustered here in South San Francisco, and there are over 100 there, but there's another 400 or 500 throughout the peninsula, and there's even some nice hot spots in the East Bay as well. And so that was one of our first revelations, is that it's not just in one spot like everyone thought. There actually are some other hot spots. So that was biotech. This is pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical was interesting too, because that was spread even more evenly throughout the entire region. Most people, again, thought pharmaceutical companies, except for a few here and there that we know about, they're probably in South San Francisco, this part where I'm circling right here. Turns out they were all over the peninsula and into the East Bay as well. It got even more interesting as we looked into other parts of the biomedical industry, and we started looking at medical devices. Here are medical devices. Here's a breakpoint for us regionally. This is called the San Mateo Bridge. Over 80% of all the medical device companies are actually south of that bridge. And so one thing to know that they're all there, but then task two, as you look at your ecosystem, is to identify why companies are where they are. And so we went in and interviewed hundreds of these companies. I say we, those wonderful grad students of mine, we sent them out, and they identified why. And there's a long-term legacy of hardware companies south of the San Mateo Bridge, mainly in electronics and in semiconductors. And in many ways, as those types of companies left, the voids, the buildings, the supply networks, the employees, they moved into medical device companies. And so this medical device industry really follows the entire South Bay into Fremont, all through San Jose, up through parts of the southern Silicon Valley Peninsula. And so again, really interesting story. Remember, like I said, here's what it looked like. You got tons and tons of companies, 2,500. You start pulling them apart, and you start seeing stories about where these different segments are located. All right. Going even further, here's medical equipment. This is diagnostics and surgical equipment and those types of things. Again, lots of companies, over 70% south of the San Mateo Bridge. Again, following some of those lines. And the way we've been able to use this data, I'll just give you a couple of ideas that fit nicely into ecosystem building. The community colleges down here in the South Bay have shifted their focus from biotech to medical devices and equipment, because that's where all the demand is. In addition, realtors have said, instead of us trying to attract more biotech companies, why don't we attract more medical device and medical equipment companies. So a lot of different stakeholders have used our data and our maps because they said, now that we know where the different segments are, we can cater to their needs more effectively. And so this has been a really useful tool. In addition, there's been some industry associations, Biocom, which is our industry association here in the Bay Area. They've said, we used to put on biotech seminars and events in different parts of the Bay Area. Now we know we need to put some medical device and equipment seminars and meetups in different parts of the Bay Area. Again, following our maps as we made these public to everyone. Right, it keeps getting even more interesting now. There's some new segments we've been tracking here. This is digital healthcare, and we found close to 150 digital healthcare companies in San Francisco. At the time, the mayor of San Francisco talked about the types of industries in our city, had no idea there were so many digital healthcare companies. So this tool, this type of mapping, turns out to be really effective for government officials too. They often don't know who's in their city, and it's hard. As everyone knows, NICS codes aren't very useful. Other data, kind of government macro level data, isn't very useful. It really takes on the ground, like I said, door knocking and checking these companies out. So this is digital healthcare. Clearly throughout, Stanford University and the peninsula, that's no surprise. But this cluster in San Francisco was a really significant surprise for everyone. Even further, here's genomics companies. Again, another significant cluster in San Francisco. No surprise here throughout the peninsula and Silicon Valley. So that's the first story. You start with all of these companies. That's a real task right there and a real accomplishment. And with Stephen's support, we really were able to pull this all off. But pulling it apart, that's equally important, because then you start seeing the stories and understanding why companies are where they are. So that's the first takeaway that I want to share with you this morning. The second one is that I put together a little heat map, and I started seeing these hotspots around the Bay Area. Here's the San Francisco one. You know now why, the digital healthcare and genomics companies. South San Francisco, everyone knew about that one. Everyone thought the whole industry was there. But then there's these significant clusters through Silicon Valley, and there's cluster here in Fremont, and there's one right up here, up in Berkeley and Emeryville. So we got real curious, and we calculated what are called location quotients. And most everyone on the call probably is familiar with these, but that just shows a proportion of companies in a certain industry relative to the industry and the state as a whole. And so we ran these location quotients, and we found 5 areas that were really significant: San Francisco, South San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Fremont, Hayward, Newark, and Berkeley, Emeryville. We came up with some fancy names once we started to learn about these clusters. I sent students out. We did lots of interviews. We gathered even more data on each of these 5 clusters. We call them microclimates, and microclimates of innovation and entrepreneurship, because a microclimate is a specific area that has unique characteristics that really create that environment. And so we started finding out interesting stories about all 5 of these locations. And so the second thing I want to share with you are these little highlights. Berkeley, Emeryville turns out that's a hot spot for small startups connected to the university, UC Berkeley and the Berkeley labs. Many highly educated people, master's and PhD levels of people, lots and lots of government assistance, and the highest turnover rate, the highest death rate of any of the 5 microclimates. So a very robust area for new ideas, research, commercialization. And so we started to see personalities in these different 5 microclimates in the Bay Area. And the way that's relevant to you as ecosystem developers, different type of resources are needed, different types of engagement, different types of stakeholders, really a different plan for each of these microclimates. Second microclimate, San Francisco. See these purple and yellow? Those are all companies that are in digital healthcare and genomics. Different types of needs for these companies. They're pretty much tech companies, really. They need great internet connectivity. They need computer science people. They need engineers, a different set of resources that they need, and different types of stakeholders. So again, a second microclimate, very different from the first one in Berkeley and Emeryville. Third one, this is South San Francisco. Again, close to 400 biomedical companies, almost all of them biotech and pharma. And I coined that proximity pipeline because instead of the big companies doing internal research and developing their own pipeline, it turns out through our interviews that companies were locating here so that they could be an arm's length pipeline of research. Small and medium-sized companies looking to be funded and acquired by some of the big companies. And so there's this robust ecosystem that's biotech and pharma. Again, another microclimate, another personality. All right. And a different set of resources and stakeholders. And in many ways, for all of you as planners, another playbook, really. All right. Number 4, integrated products. That's what I call Silicon Valley. Turns out, Harvard Business Review back in 2012 did this article, and they said the biotech industry needs its own Silicon Valley. They need their own identity by a clear location. Turns out Silicon Valley is the location for the cluster of the biotech industry and the biomedical industry at large. And so again, way over 400 companies in this region and very much integrated products. So companies that will have a software element, will have sensors, will have biological elements, all of the kind of cutting edge other industries that are in Silicon Valley are contributing to biomedical companies there, a true integrated products ecosystem or microclimate. Again, different playbook, different types of companies, different type of setting. So very interesting. So 4, and then the last one, this is what I call scale up. And this is the Fremont, Hayward, Newark cluster here. Again, way over 200 companies, and most of them are manufacturing. And so what we see is that the companies move to this microclimate to actually make things. And so Stephen and I brought resources to this area. We had meetups. We mapped out all the suppliers and contract manufacturers and component providers. And we did a different play for this ecosystem, this microclimate. So again, here, let me sum up again back to right here. 5 different microclimates: Berkeley, Emeryville, research commercialization, technology emergence in San Francisco, proximity pipeline in South San Francisco, Silicon Valley, integrated products, and then over here in the East Bay with Hayward and Fremont and Newark, scale up. And so that's the second takeaway from this. Different microclimates within the larger macro ecosystem. Most people see an ecosystem being the whole region. There's these microclimates within that need different types of resources. Last thing I want to share with you is this right here, and then we'll take some questions if we have a little time. We started tracking the movement of companies. It is incredibly popular for the media, particularly a politically biased media, to talk about how companies are leaving California. We did the data, we did the research. We tracked 100 companies, and yes, some of them moved out of the Bay Area. 45 of the 100 companies moved out of the state of California. But 55 companies, the majority, stayed in the Bay Area and just moved from one microclimate to another. So that was a fascinating takeaway. And this is the third thing I wanted to share with you, is that when you have this larger macro ecosystem, there's often movement within that ecosystem to different microclimates. So let me give you an example. No companies moved to Berkeley Emeryville, but look at Berkeley Emeryville. They had a total of 30 companies that moved to different ecosystems. 7 of the companies moved to Fremont because what they did is they scaled up and started manufacturing. Another 5 moved to Silicon Valley so they could be close to their venture capital. Another 5 moved to South San Francisco so they could be close to that kind of proximity pipeline we talked about. And then another 4 moved to San Francisco because they were digital healthcare and genomics types companies. And 9 moved out of the state because they scaled up. And so the point is this: 30 companies, Berkeley Emeryville, over a 10-year period moved, but they all didn't move out of state like everyone thought, or the kind of this narrative that people tried like to push. Only 9 did. The other 21 companies moved somewhere else in the Bay Area for strategic reasons as they scaled up, close to funding, close to potential partners. So the third takeaway for you is that is that within this larger ecosystem, there's movement within from one microclimate to another. And that's pretty fascinating because it's often for strategic reasons, not this flight reasons that people often push in the media. So let me stop there with those three lessons, map all the companies, pull them out and find out what the stories about why they are where they are. Number two, the whole kind of microclimate concept. And then number three, the movements within the ecosystem. So I'll stop there. And
Gregory, that's awesome. You had a couple of slides about this vertical within the United States and across the world.
yes.
And I think that's important. Maybe you can talk about that. There's some questions that came in on the chat.
Sure.
And a big, the big question is, is all of this good hard work that you and your students and Stephen have done, where do they access the playbook for your assessment and methodology for doing this work? Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'll give a little teaser because I know people are from the rest of the country. I have data for the whole country, and I've got it for the 10-year period as well. And so there's been some interesting movements. Cities like Seattle they've grown significantly. Those of you from the Northwest know that. Boston, Cambridge has continued to be really strong, but primarily in biotech and pharma, not as robust as, say, the Bay Area. So there's some interesting national stories. And then I have great fortune and good grad students. I have a great data set for the whole world. And so I've got data from 2013 and 2023, 2024 on the whole world. And so the US used to be 80% of the industry. Now they're 60%. It's not that we've lost our mojo. It's the fact that the rest of the world has really grown in the biotech or biomedical industry. And so if anyone's interested, contact me and I can talk about national and global as well.
Can you put your contact info in the chat?
Yep,
People
I'll
can
do
grab
that.
That really would be awesome.
And then Stephen and I have we've published some reports, and there's also been some journal articles that have been published on our work too. And that could give some people some background on that. So I'll put my information there. And if you're looking for background maps, journal articles, I'm willing to share any of those with anyone.
That's awesome, man. Gregory, really, really helpful. And one of the threads that I'd like to continue with you is around what you've done in this vertical, kind of crosswalked with the big 6 elements that have gone back, which included a lot of location quotient, assessment information to see if we can leverage resources there. I think that's a really interesting opportunity. Please go ahead.
No, and you raise a really good point, because a case study on the Bay Area, that's interesting, right? But is the concept translatable to other parts of the country and the world, especially to other industries? That's what would make this microclimates concept really powerful if it is transferable. So I'd love to collaborate with anyone who's interested.
Well, that's great. Let's make that a next segment of our interaction, and then we'll report back to this group on Monday how that's developing. And we're excited about that. One of the things that we've learned on the kind of the behavioral science piece is, with so many busy professionals, we keep these calls right at 30 minutes every week. We capture them and encourage folks to distribute because they're out there doing the systems change that needs to happen. So we are at time, and I want to thank you, Gregory, and everyone for being on this call and teaming together to make a difference. So that ends today's call. We'll be back next Monday, and please check out, distribute your AMCC update newsletter, and let us know what we're missing, what we can do better, and all the cool opportunities that are happening across the country. Thanks all. See you next week.
Thank you.